Hey there, I'm Jan from WP Mastery and host of the WP Agency Summit, and I'm a big fan of Cloudways. So I wanted to walk you through the Cloudways interface, how I'm using it to host around 50 websites. So I have two accounts with Cloudways. The one I'm showing you right now, let me zoom in a little bit. The one you're seeing right here has 14 websites on 2 servers, so that's my personal account, and then we have a agency account with 4 additional servers that host around, I think, 40 websites, something like that. And I wanted to explain why I trust Cloudways with not just my personal sites, but my customers' websites that we host as well. And one of the big reasons is their interface. It's super easy to use. It's not as cluttered as cPanel. And as you can see with Cloudways, you can have various servers and you have applications. Now, the server is any type of virtual server that you would like. So when I add a new server, imagine you are starting from scratch. The first thing you do is add a server. You are then taken to this form right here where you can select the application you want to run on your server, which is WordPress in various variations. PHP, Laravel, Magento, Drupal, and the list goes on. So for me, it's usually WordPress, and I would just give it a name. Let's say it is WP Demo. The server is WP Demo. So that's basically for you to recognize what's going on the server. And then Cloudways makes it super easy to spin up a DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr, AWS, or Google Cloud Platform server and gives you all the information that you need. So say, for example, we want to go with a Vultr server. We would have the server size that we can select depending on how much power we need in the server, how many websites we have, or how much traffic the websites will get. And if you're not sure about this, I found the Cloudways support to be very helpful in estimating what server size you need. So they won't always tell you to go with a bigger server size, but they'll be very realistic and honest with you. And then you can select the location of the server, which for me, being located in Germany, is super important because I do have this option to host in Frankfurt in Germany. That's due to GDPR. It's for our customers very important. And then you have the pay-as-you-go model with Cloudways, which is really appealing to me. So you can see exactly how much you have spent per hour and how much you will be billed monthly. And there's no additional charges. So there is this concept of Cloudways is Cloudways provides this platform. So platform.cloudways.com is what they provide, again, with the service. And the server itself is provided by those companies. And what Cloudways does is they handle the payment for those companies for you. So you would only get one invoice from Cloudways, and you won't be billed separately for the Vultr server. And it's the same with basically every cloud provider. So with AWS, you can select size, bandwidth, storage, and so on, which I think is super appealing. And when it comes to managing those servers, the ones that you have installed, it is super convenient to do that. So usually managing a server requires quite a knowledge of administrative background, but you don't need to have that with Cloudways. So you have what's called master credentials. It's basically your one login that has access to all the sites you're running on the server. You have a nice monitoring tab right here where you can basically just see how your server is doing. So that takes a while to load. Okay, so now that the statistics are up, you can see we have RAM usage, we have CPU, disk usage. So this server was actually the one hosting the WP Agency Summit, and I now can scale it down a little bit because I don't need 4 gigabytes of RAM anymore. You can manage services. So this is what Cloudways calls the Thunder stack. This is the stack of software used to run the websites. And as you can see, you can monitor every single part of the stack one by one, enable, re-enable, or restart, purge cache, and so on. So you can do all sorts of stuff right here that you usually would have to do via a command line interface on the server directly, which again, not everybody has the knowledge to do so. Then another thing that sets Cloudways apart from other hosts is the settings and packages tab, where you can basically tweak settings that other hosters won't even give you access to. So you can set execution limits, you can set upload sizes, memory limits, and all sorts of stuff. For advanced settings, you can even go into further advanced PHP variables, MySQL values, Apache and Nginx and stuff like that. And those are host settings that especially German hosters usually don't give you access to, so I appreciate that. And with the packages, here you can see what we use in our agency as the main configuration. So we always have the most up-to-date PHP version. For the database, we usually use the MariaDB engine. That's something that you have to select when creating a server. As you can see, you cannot change this when the server is existing already. And we do have the Redis cache installed on the server. That's usually our production setting right here. Then if we go further through the server settings, you can specify whitelists or blacklists for SSH, SFTP, and MySQL connections, which we usually don't touch, to be honest. And with vertical scaling, what we can do is, if we see that a server is not able to keep up with the traffic that it receives, so it doesn't handle the traffic nicely and the website keeps breaking down, what you can do is you can simply drag this to the next bigger size and then click on scale now, and the server will literally upscale. I won't do this now because, as I've said earlier, I don't need to scale. Then you have backups, which is super convenient to have this layer of security. So you can specify when the backup is running, how often the backup is run. So from hourly to once a week, you can specify that. You can see how big the backups are. You can specify the backup retention time, which is for us usually just 1 week, because we do have all the sites in main WP for managing them. And you have the option to create local backups, which will take up, in our case, 21.5 gigabytes of space on the server, but that allows you to download those backups. So that is super cool. That is super convenient. We usually use local backups only when we are about to delete a server. So we then pull one backup of the server, and otherwise we just keep them in the cloud because we don't really need them. And lastly, you can configure SMTP with either your own SMTP, so for example Mailgun, Mandrill, SendGrid, or you could use Elastic Email and configure that through Cloudways. The reason we don't use SMTP on server level is because we have multiple applications on varying domains connected that all have independent SMTP services. So we just configure them in WordPress usually. And speaking of WordPress, let's go through the applications. So as you can see, there are a lot of websites on this server right now. And one thing that I want to show you with the WP Agency Summit website right here is how we're managing those applications on Cloudways. And the first thing we always do is we set up application-based credentials. So you can see those here on the right-hand side. And basically, that is access to just that application. So we have a dedicated SFTP and SSH access just for this application, and we can pass that on to team members or developers, freelancers, what have you, who are supposed to only work on that specific website. That's super cool. Staging management comes in quite handy with Cloudways, because with one click you can copy the data from live to staging. Let me just do that right now. I can specify if I want to copy the files and the database or just either of those. And then Cloudways copies the data for us, and I resume the video when that copying is done. Okay, the copying has now been completed, and as you could see, it was super easy to just copy from live to staging. And if you are done with the edits on staging and you want to copy them to live, that is super easy as well. So you can just click on the pull button right now, and then Cloudways would give you the option to simply move all data and all the files that are on staging to the live website. And I obviously don't want to do this right now because the WP Agency Summit website is still live, but you could see how this would work when you're doing active development on the staging side right now. The next step that I want to show you is the analytics. So we do have a similar monitoring tool on the application level as we have on the server level that we saw earlier, which helps you to identify not just the IP requests. To be honest, I don't really use the IP requests that often, but the bot traffic is very important to me, because having bots on the website can take up quite a bit of server resources. So first of all, big shout out to the Black Hole plugin by Jeff Starr. I use it on almost every website to basically eliminate bot traffic. And as you can see right here, it is installed on the WP Agency Summit 2, and there is really not much bot traffic going on. So one day, and what's that, like 100, maybe 120 bots over the past 24 hours. So I don't really care about those too much. Then we can obviously see further analytics for PHP, MySQL, disk usage, and so on. And we can access the log files, which also isn't as convenient as it is right here with most other web hosting companies. And especially the error log is important when you're running an agency and you want to debug errors and see why things went down. You'll want to see when the errors start happening. And you can certainly do that by going through the Apache error log right now. That's one feature we use quite often. And then we can continue with the domain management. And as you can tell, you can specify a primary domain, you can specify additional domains, and Cloudways has a really good article on how you can connect those domains to the website. So that knowledge base article is linked directly in the appropriate context, as you can see. Then we can have cron jobs set up. So that is quite convenient if you rely on cron jobs, for example, to publish posts regularly, and you don't want to rely on the WordPress-based cron, which has its issues, admittedly. You can then specify cron jobs on the server level. SSL certificates are super easy to create. You can just set up a free Let's Encrypt certificate or upload your own ones. You can have them auto-renew. So the auto-renew feature extends expiry of your Let's Encrypt certificates by 90 days, as you can see right here, and that works like a charm. So I have no SSL issues whatsoever with the website. You can use the backup and restore feature to restore the backup of the website. As you can see right here, I have the first backup December 6th, or the oldest backup, I should rather say, is December 6th, and I could restore that with a click of a button. That's super convenient if you don't want to run your own backup plugins. But as I said, when you're managing multiple websites, especially websites for customers, then I highly recommend checking out Main WP to manage them all at one place. Deployment via Git is cool if you want to automate stuff. However, I found it for my use case to not be working so well, because you can have just one SSH key per application. And say you have two repositories on this application, one for a plugin, one for the theme, then you would have the same SSH key for both repositories, and adding those to different repositories on GitHub caused issues for me in the past. So I use a tool called Jenkins to automatically deploy from Git push commands, but that's out of the scope of this Cloudways review. Application settings are quite straightforward. I don't really touch those in the most of the times. You can specify a folder name, the web root, and so on. That might come in handy. But as I said, we usually do not use them, but it's good to have those features. Two things that we do use quite often is the SSH access. We enable those for most applications because just of the way we manage them. We sometimes go into SSH, use WP CLI commands on the command line. And then what we also have seen cause issues in certain circumstances is this course headers feature that has shown, I think, with Elementor and WP Rocket. It had some issues, so we sometimes disable the course headers so that fonts and icons and stuff like that load properly. But other than that, we just keep these settings as they are. Migration tools is just a plugin download, really, where you can download the WordPress, the Cloudways migration plugin, but you can also download that from the WordPress site directly. And the CDN is super cool. The Cloudways has integrated that, but for the WP Agency Summit, we use the Bunny CDN just because of personal preference and experience. We don't have the Cloudways CDN set up right here, but as you can see, it's quite straightforward, and the pricing, $1 per 25 gigabyte per application, really is quite aggressive. So it's quite cheap. Aggressive in terms of undercutting prices of CDNs. Usually you would usually pay more. So that's a great service that Cloudways has integrated a CDN into their platform right away. And that's basically it. So that is how we manage. Yeah, if you have any questions about Cloudways, I'm happy to help. And just let me know. Thanks for watching.